Good day to you, and welcome back to Intro to Mass Media. You know, is there anything that you can think of that you do 10,000 times per week? 10,000 times per week, is there anything you do? Perhaps breathing? Maybe. Eating? Chewing? Probably not. Blinking? Maybe. Well, there is something that you do 10,000 times a week without even realizing it, and that is viewing advertisements. That's right, you're exposed to 10,000 advertisements per week through your travels in your normal life. The kinds of things that you see when you drive down the road on billboards, the kinds of radio commercials you hear when you stop to fill up with gas, the TV commercials that you watch in between all of your shows, the banner ads that pop up when you visit websites. You are seeing 10,000 ads per week. And so that serves as the basis for why we have an entire chapter on advertising, a chapter that we're beginning today in one half of the class and then continuing on this Tuesday and discussing the second half of the chapter. It begins for us a new way of studying mass media. In the past, before Exam 2, we were talking about mass media as being basically technologies that developed that then created a whole new way of living. Now we're starting to talk about some of the content that appears on all of the technologies and some of the issues that go along with it. And that's the way the back third of the class is going to go, and we're starting with advertising today. So advertising, just to finish out my introduction here, is a very prevalent part of our lives, but it also is a very important part of the U.S. economy. The U.S. economy is very much based on advertising, receiving all kinds of dollars coming in from manufacturers to gauge the health of the state of the economy. Advertising also in the media field is very important because it pays for the content and it pays the salaries of people who work in the field. That's how radio stations and TV stations and internet websites and newspapers and magazines and to a less extent books, but that's how they all pay for themselves unless you're in a non-commercial radio medium or non-commercial film medium or non-commercial television medium. Most of the funding that comes to pay for media here in the U.S. comes from advertising. So let's talk about advertising as Amanda in my one class and Jason in my other class follows along with some links to help illustrate things. And the first thing we want to talk about is the birth of what we call the consumer culture. It's a culture, the consumer culture, that is based on the idea of purchasing things for satisfaction, not purchasing things for need. You know, you purchase food because you have to have food. And in fact, you don't even have to purchase it, you could grow it. But when you purchase a pair of Nike shoes, you may need shoes, but you don't have to have Nike shoes. Nike shoes is something you want, and it makes you part of a consumer culture. So how does a consumer culture get started, and how is it related to advertising? Well, let's start with some of the very first ads to examine it. And if Amanda will pause momentarily and take a look at the Boston Newsletter, you will see one of the very first publications in 1704 to print an ad. Let's take a look. Okay, now that you've taken a look at that ad and hopefully have been able to read some of the font, you'll see that there's no flashy graphics. Even the products that are described in that ad are not described in terms of they're the best or the brightest or the freshest. It's just telling you, for example, that some goods are for sale. Nevertheless, that's the first kind of ad that we had. This all changed, however, with the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s. You remember we've used the Industrial Revolution as the basis for a lot of changes in mass media and a lot of changes in our lives. And the reason that the Industrial Revolution changed advertising is because it took products and made them very affordable to the average person, because those products are being produced in a mass production way now. So when the products are very affordable to the average person, now you have advertisers wanting to get involved because more people are buying the products. You have a mass audience of people buying a shovel, buying a kitchen pot to cook on, buying all kinds of things. And now you can advertise to those people and try and convince them to purchase your particular pot or your particular shovel. So in other words, advertising introduces a whole new way of living where everybody can afford things that they weren't able to afford in the past, and you can spend money on things that you don't need but you may want because those things are starting to influence the way that people perceive you. So this also goes along with the consumer culture now, in that you are starting to purchase products in part because of the way that people will perceive you. For example, this shirt that I'm wearing today is a zip up. It's not something that I bought for myself, but my wife gave it to me, and it presents an athletic look. It's not something that somebody would wear if they're not into athletics. I'm not saying I am into athletics, but this is part of what goes along with the imagery of the products that you purchase. If I was wearing, for example, a t-shirt that said Brewski's Beverage on it, that wouldn't be communicating the same kind of image that this zip-up, warm-up suit is communicating. And that's the way that consumerism affects you. You start to see your purchase of products as being tied in with your identity. Now, prior to department stores, advertising was used to sell products in small mom and pop stores, your local hardware shop or your local wine cellar. But department stores come along in the late 1800s as a kind of giant store to house all kinds of products in one particular space. It's where products were retailed. And so you could go into a department store and you could browse for things to wear. You could browse for household furnishings. You could browse for furniture, all within the department store. We're going to take a look right now at one of the very first department stores. It was the John Wanamaker store, located in Philadelphia. It's still there, that very building. It's now a Macy's, and it's located right next to Center City Square. Take a look at one of the original department stores, John Wanamaker. All right, the next phase that we want to examine in advertising is what we call the growth of brand names. Prior to brand names, people would buy goods based on the quality of the goods. You want to buy some broccoli at a local store? You're going to look at the color of the broccoli, you're going to look at the taste, you're going to look at how long it lasts, how fresh it is. Those are the things that you have in mind. But along with brand names comes the idea of associating an imagery with a particular product that is only made by one particular company. So brand names become necessary to distinguish mass-produced products from others. If you have one company that's making a spatula and you have another company that's making a spatula and they're essentially the same thing, then you use the brand name to try and distinguish your company as being better for customer service or better for coupons or better for the price of the product. So brands come to be associated with an imagery of a particular product. A brand is in essence a word or a phrase that's attached to a prepackaged consumer good so they can be better promoted. It's a word or a phrase that's attached to a prepackaged consumer good so that they can be better promoted. We're going to give an example of that in a moment. What brands do is they reduce uncertainty. You want a hamburger? If you buy a McDonald's hamburger, you know exactly what you're getting. You're not taking a chance at a roadside stand that's owned by one person making hamburgers. You're going to get exactly what you expect when you buy a McDonald's hamburger because the brand of McDonald's is telling you what that hamburger is going to be like. Now, one of the very first brands was the Quaker Oats brand. Think about that. It's not just oats for your oatmeal that you might be ordering, it's Quaker Oats. And it's the idea that oats are being associated with a religion that has very much an ethic of not flaunting wealth. That's what Quakers are very much about. Here in the Poconos, as a matter of fact, many of our resorts were built by Quakers as places that were not really lavish, not like a Las Vegas resort, because Quakers were not meant to flaunt their money in public, so they were able to go enjoy themselves in a resort but not have it be a flashy resort. So that's in part why Quaker Oats is so successful. It's getting across an image because of its brand. Here's oats that are under the guardianship of somebody who's not selfish for themselves, but somebody who has a good ethic. And of course, Quakers are also known for being friends and friendly. So Oats is borrowing the imagery associated with Quakers to produce a brand that's going to help sell that particular product. One of the very first other kinds of brands that we're going to take a look at now, after we've just taken a look at Quaker Oats, hopefully. Now we're going to take a look at Pears Soap. Pears Soap was developed by Thomas Barratt, B-A-R-R-A-T, and he came up with the idea of people don't want to just use soap to clean things. They also want to use soap to give them some health benefits, to provide moisture to their hands, or to provide a nice smell in the kitchen when you're washing up. And so Thomas Barat developed not only the first brand, but he developed one of the first ad campaigns, all focusing around the slogan, "Have you had your pears today? Have you had your pears today?" Now think about that. It's a pretty simple phrase, but what it gets into is the expectation that you should be using pears every single day. And if you don't use pears soap, you may have a problem with your health, or you may have a problem with the way that you smell, or at the very least something will be missing from your life. So now you're starting to see how advertising really gets into your psyche. It's not just something that informs you about a product and gets you interested in it. It's something that starts to affect the way that you think about yourself. In fact, I have a friend who lives in Sweden, and he says that the key to advertising, check this out, is all about owning a piece of your mind. If you cannot go to the store and buy a cola soda without having to buy Coke or having to buy Pepsi, then your mind is in a way owned by Coke or Pepsi because you're not open to other possibilities. Now let's move on to advertising supported media. Most of the media in our country have been supported by advertising. It started in the 1830s when the penny press, remember we discussed that back when we talked about newspapers, when the penny press became affordable to everybody because a newspaper only cost a penny. And this made audiences really grow for media. Once the audiences grew into the thousands and eventually into the millions, you have advertisers that are interested in supporting those media by taking out space to provide their ads, or taking out time, as is the case for radio and TV, by purchasing 60 seconds to advertise a product. So now you have media moving away, not entirely, but moving away from subscriptions, that is, people paying for an issue of the newspaper or people paying for a magazine, and that being the way that the magazine is funded, by people paying for it. Now you have advertisers paying for the medium, because advertisers are paying for space and the medium uses that money to produce the content. Now when products went national, advertisers started to get interested in magazines more than newspapers. Newspapers are largely local, and though you may have an ad in there for a GM car or a Ford truck, for the most part, ads are local. They're designed to get you to go into a local tanning salon and purchase its services, or a local restaurant. Magazines are inherently national because they are not necessarily about local issues. They're about timeless issues like the presidency, the Obama presidency. And therefore, people are reading magazines in Alaska and California and Florida. And so you can put advertising out that's going to appeal to them. You can put Geico insurance ads in advertising. You can put jewelry in ads in magazines. One of the first people to do this in television, moving to that now, was William Paley, who founded the CBS network strictly to advertise his family cigar company. And so CBS became a network that was more as an advertising content-based medium than it was a news content medium or a drama content medium. So TV had ads from the very, very beginning. Radio was a little bit slower to adopt ads. It started out with a toll as a way to be funded, where a company would pay and then sponsor an entire radio show like AT&T, and that was called a toll. But radio then very quickly went over to advertising afterwards. Magazines started selling advertising very early on also, and newspapers went from tolerating advertising in the beginning to actually encouraging advertising. Which brings me now to trying to affect the way that you think about advertising, because the way that I've been describing advertising, as I adjust my lecture notes here, the way that I've been describing advertising may have you thinking about it as what you were doing when you were buying advertising is you're buying time on news in a radio program, or time in a TV program, or space in a newspaper and a magazine, but that's not really the case. What you are doing when you're an advertiser is you are buying access to an audience. You are buying access if you purchase 60 Seconds on WZZO Radio, a rock station in Allentown. You are buying access to males 18 to 35 years old. Males who are blue-collar males because of the kind of music that's played, rock and roll. So you're really buying access to audiences when you're buying ads. Now, there are two kinds of messages that are used to describe the kinds of advertising messages. One is known as a direct action message, and this is where you're actually urging people to do something right now. It's also called a call to action. So you're saying something in your ad that is to the effect of, so hurry down, these prices won't last. The prices on these beds are 40% off. Hurry down today, these prices will not last. That's a direct action message. You're trying to get people to drive to a place and purchase a product, or go online and purchase a product. That's compared to a second kind of message, which is an indirect action message, where you're just strictly trying to build the image of a product. So you're not really advertising a specific discount that's going on or a specific product in general. You're just trying to build up the credibility of a brand. And we're going to take a look at that right now with a Maytag ad. Maytag is a manufacturer of appliances like stoves and refrigerators. And Maytag is always trying to get across the idea that when you purchase a Maytag product, that you hardly ever have to get it repaired. So their advertising often focuses on the Maytag repairman who has nothing to do. So let's take a look at an indirect action message building up the brand of Maytag through this Maytag repairman campaign. Take a look. All right, now we're going to move on to different types of advocacy advertising. Different types of advertising, and the first type that we want to talk about is advocacy advertising. In advocacy advertising, you're trying to promote a particular point of view rather than a product. The particular point of view may be health related, like anti-smoking campaigns, or may be politically related, like lower taxes. We're going to take a look right now at an ad campaign that is defunct. It stopped in 2008, but you will still remember it because it was so popular. It's the Got Milk campaign, trying to get people to drink milk and move away from soda, because milk is so much healthier for you, even though it can be fattening. Let's take a look now at the Got Milk advocacy advertising spot. All right, now we're going to move on and take a look at another kind of advertising. This is called public service advertising, or PSAs as we more commonly call them, public service announcements. It's strictly not a kind of advertising because they are aired most often on non-commercial radio and TV stations, which are not allowed to run advertising, like WESS is a non-commercial station. And these are to improve the welfare of the public, to better people. And so you may have campaigns like the Smokey the Bear campaign, which many of you know. It's one of the most recognizable PSA campaigns. Is to get people not to light fires carelessly in our national forests, which can burn down and cause all kinds of health-related hazards, from inhalation of smoke to the loss of beautiful scenery to the contribution to global warming. Smokey the Bear is a very, very big one. You also may remember McGruff the crime dog. There's all kinds of ads. We're going to take a look at one right here that is for heart disease, but typically when people think of heart disease and something that needs to be monitored, they think of men. And so this PSA actually talks about women needing to look at heart disease control as well. Let's take a look at this PSA on women's heart disease problems. All right, now we're going to move on to another kind of advertising. This is called trade advertising. Trade advertising is where you're promoting products directly to other businesses, not to consumers, but to other businesses. And so we have a particular ad right here that is going to demonstrate that. This ad is promoting a business, but it's the idea of coffee that you purchase not from one of these companies that engage in non-free trade. That's a company that goes into a South American or Central American country and pays very, very low wages to people to pick the coffee beans. In those countries, this ad is complaining when you purchase a cup of coffee, the person working on a farm in a no-trade country is only getting 2 cents from the amount of money that's paid for coffee. And so this is trying to sell coffee that is produced at a coffee plantation that does not engage in those unfair labor practices. This is a trade ad for coffee. Take a look. All right, now we're going to move on to the advertising business. We're going to talk about the 4 major groups that are involved in advertising, the first of which is the client. The client is the company that has something to sell. It's the advertiser, if you will. It's the McDonald's, it's the local car dealership, it's the hardware store, it's the nail salon. And they may be wanting to do more than just sell the product. They may be wanting to increase awareness of the product. That's something that ESU would like to do. Did you know that ESU actually has a product that was developed in the business incubator called the Innovation Center? It's located just past the University Ridge Apartments. And this product is called, what is it called? It's called Lime Off. I have the name wrong, but basically what it's about is it's a little kit that will allow you, if you go out into the woods and get bitten by a tick, to capture that tick and to bring it back and see if it's carrying Lyme disease. I think it's called Lyme Aid, that product. So that's an example of increasing awareness. A lot of people don't know about that product, even though you're going to the university that produces it. So the ad campaign could be strictly to increase awareness of the product. You can also have a client that's taking ads out to encourage people to use an existing product. They may have it already, but they don't. They may have a can of Lysol that they bought a long time ago that's sitting in their closet, but people don't use it. So you encourage them to bring it out to increase the freshness in your bathroom or to kill mold. You can also have ads on the behalf of the client to build a positive image for a product. A product sometimes can go sour if it has bad news, like the Chevy Cobalt right now is being recalled because the airbags were not deploying and some people have been killed. So you can bet, not right now because there's a lot of investigation going on, but Chevy will start to produce new ads of Cobalt that try to get the positive image back for that particular vehicle. You can also have ads produced for a client that demonstrate a new use for a product. For example, baking soda for something is something that was for years used in just cooking, but then it became known as something that can be used to reduce odors. It absorbs foul odors, so try and get people to use it as something that they store in their refrigerator. And then most recently, baking soda has been repositioned as something that can clean your teeth. It can help whiten your teeth as a natural remedy as opposed to some of the teeth whitening chemicals that can be dangerous for you. In order for a product to be successful, it has to be a good product at the right place and the right time, and the client is very interested in that timing. Let's move on to the second major group now, which is the ad agency. The ad agency. This is an ad agency that works separately to sell time and space to media. And by that I mean, if I am Coca-Cola and I want to launch a national campaign to get people drinking Coke because Coca-Cola sees that people are moving away from soda, they're moving towards energy drinks, and they're moving towards designer water, and Coca-Cola is losing some market share, so you want to get people interested in Coca-Cola again. What you're going to do maybe, or probably, is contact an ad agency to find the best TV stations and the best radio stations in every market, in the Philadelphia market, in the Boston market, in the New York market. Find which radio and TV stations are going to get you to the audience that you want. And maybe you're going to go for people my age, people above 50 who grew up with Coke and didn't grow up with energy drinks, and you're going to try and get them to switch back. So you need radio and TV stations with content that get to people 50 years and older. That's what an ad agency is for. An ad agency typically earns 15% commission on any advertisements that are sold to media, to radio, TV, newspapers, magazines, and the web. And advertising agencies have lots of functions that help them to mount their campaign and to analyze media. They have research and planning departments. They have creativity departments. And oftentimes they will be given the task, come up with an ad campaign. Like Geico has a long-running ad campaign. You give us 15 minutes and we may save you 15% on your car insurance. And they've used the gecko animal to try and get that across. And they've used the comedian acts with two people that are saying it's about as likely as a bear surfacing during the winter to ask for food. That's not one that they've used, but I'm trying to use a quick example here. These are campaigns that often advertising agencies come up with. They're not come up with by the client, Geico. They're come up with by the ad campaign.
All right, another function, another component, I should say, of the advertising business is the media. The media are the outlets for the ads. So you've got newspapers, and in newspapers, ad revenue, let me adjust my camera, ad revenue has been declining. Newspapers are struggling because people turn to Craigslist now, they turn to Facebook for things for sale, and there are other online sources that they can go to as well. And so the classified ads in newspapers has gone down. But newspapers are holding steady. And the main advantage to a newspaper ad is they can print a lot of details that would be confusing in a radio or TV ad, like phone numbers and dates. Those are things that people can study over and over in a newspaper that it's tough to absorb when you hear that in a radio or TV ad. Then you have magazines. Magazines are excellent media for reaching niche audiences. You have people that are really into the outdoors, for example, like Field and Stream is very much catered towards a male who likes to hunt and fish. Now, we have that kind of male very much in Pennsylvania. Many of you sitting in this audience will have grown up in that kind of a family. And so in that magazine, you could advertise a particular kind of jacket that's good for outdoors, that is also going to have lots of pockets, and is going to be very rugged, and is going to hide you from animals. And if you want to sell that kind of jacket, then you can target that towards an audience that you know is going to have maybe a 90% interest rate in that ad. So that's what magazines are good for. They're good for niche audience advertising. You also have outdoor advertising. That's another kind of outdoor advertising. I'm talking about billboards. I'm talking about bench seats. I'm talking about electronic signs. These are for people in the car. People who are in a car are in a captive environment. They're often bored with their driving. They want to look around and see things, not look too long, but they want to see things that make their drive interesting. And so a billboard can get to them. And you can get them sometimes to leave the road and pull into a truck stop, or get them to leave the road and pull into a Wendy's or a Sonic or a Dick's Sporting Goods, or to tune in a radio station. Yeah, media advertise in other advertising media as well. So if you have a new morning host team, maybe you want to advertise on a billboard to let people know about that. And by the way, we have the single most dense outdoor advertising space just within an hour and a half of us here in the United States. That's Times Square. That is the most valuable outdoor advertising space. It has the highest concentration of people in a particular space with the most disposable income to spend. Moving on to another medium now, we have radio. Radio is very inexpensive compared to other media, so you can broadcast messages repeatedly at a very low cost. And that's why Geico and other insurance companies use radio ads. They can just keep that message in front of people over and over and over. Television is very good at offering national ads in prime time. Prime time are the hours from 8 to 11 at night when most people are settling down for the evening with the TV on. And so that's when you can advertise really big products that you want to sell a lot of, clothing lines. Lots of car ads appear on television at night. You have ads for foods that are very well known, Gatorade and Coca-Cola. This is the big time. It's going to cost you a lot of money to pay for TV ads at night, but the payoff can be big because you have millions of people, 10 million, 20 million people that are seeing your ads. In fact, that's why we have the Super Bowl being the place where ads are debuted. Ads are debuted on the Super Bowl because it has the biggest audience all year round, with the exception of the Olympics. And so you have the most amount of people watching one medium, and that's why advertising has become not only a way to reach those people, but also a kind of show within a show. The halftime show is something that is watched by people who are actually viewing advertisements as media content that should be criticized for how funny it is, or how innovative it is, or how wild it is. We're going to take a look at one ad right here. It's for a very well-known brand, Budweiser. It was in the 2014 Super Bowl. This ad is different because it's targeting women. It's trying to bring women into the fold of purchasing Budweiser through products like Bud Light, even though that's not mentioned. And it does that through the emotions of a puppy dog. Let's take a look at this Budweiser Super Bowl ad from this last Super Bowl. All right, that'll take us now to the final medium we want to talk about, which is the internet. This is the fastest growing segment of the ad market. We're seeing increasing ads on Facebook. I'm sure that you have noticed on your own. Your news stream is more cluttered with ads. Even if you don't subscribe to Facebook, you know what I'm talking about. And you can have a whole range of different kinds of advertising content that you don't have in the other media. For example, you can have video, you can have search ads, you can have banner ads that are made up of text and graphics. When you're looking at newspapers, you can't have a video unless you go to the website. When you're listening to radio, you can't use visuals. When you're looking at TV, you can't have hyperlinks. So the internet presents a lot of possibilities, but advertisers are still somewhat reluctant because they're not sure of how effective internet advertising is, because people can cruise right past them, whereas you're sort of forced to watch a TV ad unless you're listening to a DVR. You're forced to look at a newspaper ad if you want to continue the story that started on page 1 that then continues on page 3. You have to drag your eyes across the ads to get to it. The internet is something that, kind of like a theme we've been talking about all semester long, you are in control of. And so you can click right past it if you want to. So that wraps up our first discussion on advertising. I hope you've been able to absorb the information, even though I'm delivering it to you from a mass medium, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to do that here in California, where I'm preparing for my presentation on college radio at the Broadcast Education Association. And I hope that you have enjoyed the class, and I look forward to seeing you in person on Tuesday. Have a great day.